Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States.
All right, so for the third block in the discovery funnel, we're going to focus on what? Block 1 and block 2 are a lot about the why. Who are you? What's going on the inside? And now, what are we getting ourselves into? What is on the other side? What is business? Like, what is in the civilian sector, right? The second
question.
civ div or first civ div, all these jokes that we make in the military. But what is this? It is so vast that if you jump onto Google and say, like, what is business? Good luck, right? It's going to say some general things. Same thing about companies and the rest. And so in this block, what we're going to do is we're going to do the best that we've seen of breaking this down into bite-sized chunks on general trends, trajectories inside of the businesses or inside of the types of organizations, really the what's out there, and to give just enough titles, enough of a framework to give a sense for you to begin to be curious, to explore it, understand a direction to begin to research, begin to reach out. Because when I got out, I didn't have a clue what these were. And I've even pivoted from one of the main categories to another at this point. That's what we're going to dive into today as far as working through those three. And that is the beginning of the what.
I completely agree with you. I think it's very important that we start here. And again, I really want to highlight, like, this is an overview. This is our goal here is to give you just enough information to be dangerous, to start going out, having conversations, radically collaborate with people in these various types of jobs so that you can start figuring out what you want to do. And I think this is going to be a great foundation because just like you, man, how many times did I call or text you when I was getting out to be like, yo, what does this mean? What is this job? What does this mean? Where do they fit in the organization? Because we're structured people in the military. And I was like, where do I fit? Where do they fit in this whole thing? Our goal here is to help you really make sense of that.
All right, so we're going to start with two side notes. The first one is quit listening to your buddies. Quit listening to your buddies on them saying, like, if you want to make money, you have to go into tech. Or, come on, it's an easy job to go do government contracting. It's the same thing that we've been doing the whole time. Or whatever your buddies are doing, say, thanks, man, I really appreciate your opinion. Tell me more, learn from it. But don't use that as guidance for your future, right? You are the best guide for your future. And what you learn from the folks that you're gathering, and you build off of your why from block 1 and block 2. So don't listen to your buddies when it comes to everyone stepping out of the military or this next transition, because they are just as confused as you. They don't know. They know just as much as you because guess what? They have the same experience as you. This goes for if you're a Lance Corporal and you're in at 3 years. It's the same thing if a captain or a colonel or if a sergeant major tells you about what's on the other side. They haven't been there. So don't listen to your buddies and appreciate their opinion. Don't tell them to kick rocks because they might have some perspective that's valuable, but don't follow the blind into the wilderness here. The second thing is that when it comes to picking which one to pursue, right, on which one you're like, that sounds interesting, go for it. Go for it. All right. You cannot become too obsessed about which one is right, which one is wrong, but use these three categories as a place to start and go for it. All right. So that's the first notes that we're going to say, like, all right, now let's step in to the next of these. All right. So those are side notes on our perspective. And I'm going to take a few categories of businesses, types, and we're going to shelf them. All right. So those ones that we're going to put on the side are ones that most military or LEO folks are going to know about. And what we're going to put aside are the arts. So actors, singing, performers, entertainers. Government services, so jumping into some 3-letter agency or some portion of state, local, federal government. And the last is NGO, so non-government organizations such as the Red Cross or other organizations like that. So we're going to take these super government or outliers on entertainment and being the next superstar. We're going to shelf those. If that's something you're interested in, fantastic. There's a lot of resources to get in and to understand those, but we're going to focus on the primary ones that majority of folks can step into.
And one thing to add before we move on to that is for those things that we left out, just because we're not talking about it here in block 3, we're going to be giving you tools later on in this course that will allow you to really dig into what those things are. So don't think that this isn't for you just because it's not coming up in this specific section when we talk about general roles and structures of those roles that you'd see in a corporate environment. You'll definitely have the tools to explore and find out more about those things as well.
All right, so the overview of the three. We have three primary ones. Advisor consultant, the first one. We have the operator. Now, this is not the military operator and all that cool stuff that we might think goes with it, but operator inside of a business. And the last is the investor space. All right. Again, we have the consultant, advisor, operator, and investor. And so the best way to think about these are the career arcs that you move through. A consultant, right? It starts as a junior consultant, most often some junior consultant role, and the arc to that is partner, right?
Yep.
It'll be a practice partner where they focus on a certain thing. A partner is responsible for bringing it business. We'll go into some further detail here in a moment. So again, the consultant space is an arc of beginning at a junior consultant and then ending at partner. The next piece is an operator. Now, inside of an operator, you can think of this as general business. Any business you can think, not any business, but we think of Nike, Ford, Shell, right? Organizations that produce a product are often inside of the operator realm. And so this career arc ends at CEO or a GM, right? GM stands for general manager and a CEO is a chief executive officer. These are individuals that are responsible for the success or failure of an organization and are responsible for a term called a P&L statement. The P&L statement stands for profit and loss, which is they're responsible for all the money that comes into an organization or a division or a unit, and they're responsible for all the expenses and the loss of producing those goods. Operator career arc ends at a CEO. And the last piece here is the investor space. The investor space begins as an associate also, and this is in private equity, venture capital, portfolio manager, hedge fund, these different spaces where it also ends with a title called partner. And this is where the individuals have a large sum of money and they went and bought organizations. And now they advise that organization as an investor and owner on how it is successful. Most often, stepping into one of these roles or these companies not requires, but has a high bar on having education around an MBA.
Either that or you either need to get in through one of those MBA programs for the most part, or you need to know someone who is in like the venture capital space or some type of investment space. It's very rare to see someone do it any other way.
It's a much tighter and small community, but those are the three primary spaces that you can step into.
The first career arc that we are going to discuss is consulting. That is where I currently work, and consulting provides three primary things to a business.
And it's super vast.
It is a big, as we go over this, you'll see this is a humongous space.
It fits into every industry. It fits into every function.
Yep.
And then so every industry and every function has these three different portions of how consulting can show up.
Yes. And sometimes even more. But these are the three primary ways you will see. If you are a consultant, these are the three primary ways you will most likely see yourself be billed out to a customer. So the first one is going to be manpower. This is where you as a consultant are billed out to a company to do really whatever the company needs you to do. They lack manpower for a specific season or for a specific task, and they just need bodies to come in and do whatever really comes up. So it's general work. The company's really giving you marching orders and you're there to fill seats. The next piece is third-party opinions. And these are, you will generally see these as two things. Audits, where consultants are coming in, and most of the time these are legally required. So in my area of expertise, the cybersecurity space, if you are a company that processes credit card payments, you are required to have a third-party audit, generally done by a consulting firm, to come in and audit your cybersecurity posture so that you can continue to collect credit card payments. The next piece is strategy. So you as a company are looking to move in a new direction, implement something. You can hire a consulting firm, which are generally individuals who are an expert in the space, and they will come in and provide you a third-party opinion on what they believe the strategy should be, where they think you should be going next, and those kinds of services, which are incredibly important. And then finally, the last broad area of work is going to be implementation. So this is going to sound like manpower, but it's very different in a specific sense. Manpower, you're getting hired to just do tasks as they come up. Implementation is really where I fit in, where as a security consultant, if a customer who uses security products in the Amazon cloud, if they cannot implement those solutions themselves because they don't have the people or the time to do it, or the people with the specific skills to do it, they will bill out myself and other security consultants at Amazon using a specific scope of work that says I will come in and I will implement this specific thing. And then I leave. So it's not general. I'm very much locked into my scope of work, and I'm there to implement a specific thing because of the specific skill set that I have. And if you decide that consulting is for you, understand that those are probably one of the 3 buckets you're generally going to fall into. As Wayne said before, this is going to be for every industry under the sun. There is 1,000 different cybersecurity consulting firms, and there are so many more for so many more industries. And you're going to most likely do one of these 3 things. And the other piece that I want to add is you're going to be doing a lot of these projects.
The projects are going to come and go. It's a project-based work. And so an idea and like how you think of this is that a consultant in a military metaphor is like the enabler. It's like the EOD tech that gets attached to the infantry platoon. It's like the translator that gets attached to come in for a specific skill set for a specific period of time to enable for that mission set. And then you're going to go do that work. And then you go back to your team and you're going to get called out again. And you can have multiple of these stacked up at the same time or just one at a time, concurrent or sequential when it comes to your consulting gigs that you're a part of. And so with Billy going through those main pieces, what we're focusing on now is some names that you should know.
Yes.
Right? These are the LeBron James, the Michael Jordan of the consulting world on titles that you should check out, right? You should check out who they are and also be aware of what they do in the space because they're world-renowned, world-known, and really have a lot of influence in major companies today. Going back, or let's just start with the big 3. You might hear this term, the big 3.
You will.
These are strategy firms. And the 3 that are in the big 3, obviously, are Bain & Company. So that's the first one. The next is Boston Consulting Group, BCG, and then McKinsey, right? So these are strategy firms come in for that third-party opinion to provide like, this is how we think you can be successful and grow your company 5x or whatever. The next term that you'll hear is the big 4. The big 4 are the accounting firms. And so these are focused more on the specific accounting aspects for the looking under the hood and seeing and confirming that all the financials and due diligence of companies are correct. So the big 4 are EY, which stands for Ernst & Young, Deloitte, KPMG, which is a series of last names, and then PwC. Right, which is PricewaterhouseCoopers. And so these are big last names that have been put together for these massive public companies that employ thousands of people. That's the big 4. And then after that, there's specialty practices. They can be all over the place. My background in executive search consulting, right, was around being a recruiter. And we call the main ones SHREK firms, right? And these are multiple different SHREK for all the ones that fit in with that. And there are hundreds of other small organizations that do the same work, just like the big 3, the big 4, and the specialty firms. So that's consulting. This career arc starts with the associate, ends with partner, where you get called in to do specific work and then you get out. You go in to do it and you come out. A lot of people in their careers will do this for a set of time, learn what they like to do, get exposure to a lot of different companies and say, that one right there, that's what I'm going to go in. I'm going to go into this specific aspect of cybersecurity. I'm going to go into the specific aspect of talent, right? Where it was with myself is it was executive search on CEOs in technology. So there were different consultants for every single one of these around just recruiting people to be in that space.
And the last thing they'll add when we talk about specialty practices is when you can dive deep to where you can have a specialty practice of like 2 people that are offering a hyper specific service. And if there's a function in business, if an operator does it, someone is probably consulting on it,
On what they do.
on what they do. And so if consulting is something that you are interested in, there is probably a firm that operates in the vertical, the industry that you want to operate in, and does the thing that you either have experience in or want to gain experience on. So you just have to dig deep enough.
All right, so that's consulting. Moving on to the next one here is the op. So this is the career arc that begins in many places and that moves up to the single point of the CEO. All right, so there are tons of ways to break this down. We're going to break it down in a model of 3 aspects that move up into the CEO role. The first is revenue, right? Sales and marketing is where we can look at this. The sales and marketing piece are about revenue generation. How do we get money to the company? So sales has a few roles around being at the beginning. You can hear the term SDR or BDR, which stands for Sales Development Rep or Business Development Rep. This is the starting position inside of sales. After that, it goes to account executive. And then we go up to these different types of channels and spaces where sales occur. But there's like
people
making phone calls, sending emails to close sales. That's closing the sale. The other side of that is marketing, which is creating demand and lead generation. And so this is when you think of general marketing on Instagram or Facebook. This is also the case in educating people. So marketers, we often think of like arts and crafts, perhaps for marketers, but this is about revenue generation. So that's the first piece, revenue generation. The next one is our product and operations. And so inside of product and operations, we have our product design, which can be from a widget, right? A Beanie Baby, a watch, all the way to a piece of code. So this goes from coding, this goes from designing a product. It can be manufacturing that product, right? So there's design a product and then the manufacturing of that and operations. How do we make them more efficient? Where are our people? How do we have all the right people? Recruiting. All of this people making goods and services happens inside of product and operations. And the last one is the finance. So how do we manage the dollars that go in? How do we account for those? Can we expect what's coming from sales and finance? And all of these wrap around each other inside of this business. Each one can lead to the CEO because there's different strengths and weaknesses that come out of these 3 portions.
As you're getting out of the military, really familiarize yourself with these 3 prongs of operations. A lot of people in the military will say, oh yeah, I know operations. I should do operation stuff when they get out of the military, and they don't even know all of the different things that go into making a business work. So it's really hard to sound like you're interested in a role in the operations arc if you don't really even know what's going on. And then the next level, if you do get a role in operations, is understanding how all of these things interconnect and intermingle. It's not something that, it's something that if you get it as you're searching for roles, that's great. But it's crucially important when you get an operator role and you have to start making things work.
Yeah. So in running through the roles one more time, because I know there's a lot to learn here, is that when we go to sales, we have outbound sales. So you're going out and hunting for that next opportunity. SDR, BDR, and A. Sales development rep, business development rep, account executive. You are the outgoing, stereotypically the outgoing person that's hunting for sales.
Yeah.
Then we have the marketing side, which is lead gen and demand gen. So marketer, creating demand in the economy, in your sector, in your segment, all the rest. Operations, right? We have product, we have the operations of that, making sure everyone shows up on time and is being conducted properly. And then also HR. So HR can have recruiting, learning and development, compensation and benefits, career architecture. HR generalists can just be understanding all the policies and how you support the workforce. The project manager, most likely you're familiar with, but this is creating a scope, having stakeholders, and then achieving that outcome, which can be, having folks on a manufacturing line to producing a series of code and all the rest in that space. And the last is inside of product specifically, we can also pull out some customer service, customer success inside of that can be very technical, and it can also be very sales oriented on that people side of things and problem solving. And then finance here, we have finance,
Yeah,
right? Different
whatever.
ways, I guess
Yeah.
you could say it here. Is we have finance, which is the money where it is today and how it's working through the organization. Tax, accounting, which is understanding exactly where it is and where we're allocating it to. FP&A, which stands for future planning analysis and analysis. Do we have the cash on hand? Do we need to go raise debt? Do I need to go get investors to do the things we want to do? And the last is merger and acquisition. How do I take two organizations and bring them together on the blood of business, which is money, right? You need it to survive. It's the only way that an organization exists. And that's our operations arc. All of these can feed into the CEO position where they feed into. And you can also hop in and out between operations to consultancy and advisory investor, but they're at different points in your career that you can make those changes.
Something that I want to add, but this advice is broadly applicable to any of the arcs that you might be interested in. Something that I did that was really helpful, and this is where you can call back, take your block 2 material and really thrive here, is you've already defined situations, external situations that make you feel really good and really bad. You've also defined portions of yourself that you want to bring out and portions that you want to leave behind. So one of the things that I did once I had defined those external situations that I want to have and avoid, and then the things I want to have and leave behind for me, I started just asking people, hey, I'm really looking for situations where I am around a lot of people. I'm talking to individuals. I'm engaging with people. And I really want to bring out my creativity, ability to present, my ability to learn new things, to teach. I like all of that stuff. What does that look like? I want to see new things a lot. That's an external thing that I really wanted. And so as I started talking about that, people started saying that might be sales, or oh, that sounds like consulting. And you have this blueprint of you that you can start shopping around through Radical Collaboration and really start digging into all of these different items, because Buster did a great job of talking about all these different items, but there are a lot. And
There's a lot.
that using you as the template and really asking people, where do I fit into this, is a great place to start researching different roles.
I've had a chance to jump between the two. I know without a doubt, I would not have been effective or helpful in the operation role that I am in today in this tech startup that I'm with. I would have been helpful out of the military because I didn't understand all these aspects of business.
Yeah.
And so I spent 3 years as a consultant. Now it was in talent, but it allowed me to dip into every function and recruit a CFO and recruit a CEO and a CTO and a CRO and a CMO and all these C's that you could come up with.
Lots of
Some
Cs.
letter and an O. I got a chance to recruit and have hundreds of conversations with them to understand what excellence was. And so after 3 years of being a consultant, understanding how the space works,
Yep.
how they work together, I think could take all of that and be a value add into an operations role. And as you talked about, like these things you want to bring forward, and as I look to the past, is I recognize like one of my lows was not being the main effort. And after 3 years in consulting work, I really started to recognize like, I'm the guy that's getting called in and then left behind because I'm not moving forward with them as they go on for the next challenge or for the next objective. I want to be the person that's doing that. That's how I decided to pivot out of consulting work. I could definitely see myself going back one day. After I do the ops thing for a while, let's go back to consultancy, and maybe the dream is even moving into the investor advisor space.
Yeah. Before we pivot into the investor advisor space, the last thing I'll say is just because Buster, Wayne, moved from the consultant space into the ops space and I'm a consultant, do not think, again, going back to block 2, just because we both have or are spending time in the consulting space, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to do that to then learn things, to then pivot into operations. There is no crucial path, and you might kill it in sales, in ops, in product, in finance, even in the investor and the advisor space. So that it might be for you. And just because we did it one way doesn't mean you necessarily should take that as a cue that you need to do it the same way as well. But let's talk about some investors.
So the next one is investor advisor. And so what investors do is you're going to have limited partners and general partners that are going to go around and fundraise. And so the whole point of private equity or venture capital is there are different stages of a company. They go and fundraise millions and millions of dollars from wealthy individuals, from pension plans, from different organizations. They raise all this money and they say, we're going to go deploy this money and invest it in companies. And so they select organizations to put the money into with the idea that they're going to grow. And so these investors advisors, a great way to think of this is a car, right? The investor advisor owns the car and they hire operators to drive the car. So the CEO is the driver and they got all the passengers. These are all the operators, and the investor advisor owns the car. And they want to own cars that are going to win races, and they want to put the right driver in there to win that race. And the consultants are the mechanics. This mechanic does the tires. This mechanic does the gas. And that's where they come in to do their specific role. The trick here in this space is to learn about what they're interested in, right? A great indicator of market trends can be, because they're spending so much money on it and time, is where are venture capital firms and private equity firms spending their money? Where are they investing? And so a trick here is perhaps if you're looking at trying to get into certain companies or understand where the trends are, use them as a pulse check on, that's where they're spending time and money. I'm going to go investigate and look at those companies.
This is further down the line, but when I was really interested in cybersecurity startups, I would get newsletters from investment firms that only invested in new cybersecurity startups. And so I would read all of their newsletters on the new companies that they were investing in. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go talk to people on that company.
Yeah, but it's inherently risky.
It is,
right?
100%.
And to separate venture capital from private equity is that venture capital is the risk, really. It's the risk portfolio on, we're going to invest in 50 companies, and I hope that 5 of them make it big. And if 5 of them make it big, we're all good. 40 of them are going to be losers. The other 5 are going to do pretty well. And that's venture capital. Private equity, most often, is that we're taking something that we know is a rough diamond. We know it's a rough diamond, and we're going to polish it up. Private equity space, where they're looking for smaller exits, and they're most often successful a higher percentage of the time.
This is just my opinion. For this investor space, it's probably the hardest one to get into.
Straight out
of the military for sure.
I would say it's next to, it would be the most difficult.
Exactly. Really the only way is if you knew someone and you worked in a either in private equity or in venture capital that invested in Department of Defense companies, and they needed you for your expertise to either evaluate the companies they wanted to invest in, or you just happen to know someone who's in the company or in the firm, honestly. But doesn't mean you can't try. It is difficult though, because it's such a tight-knit group of people, and
but go for it.
Yeah,
right. Go
for sure.
It. The worst thing that happened, that someone might say, no, I don't have time to talk to you, which is a very low likelihood, but take the time to reach out to these folks and say, hey, I'm interested in learning about how you've been successful in this space. Again, this is the investor advisor career arc that begins at associate and ends at partner. Same titles as consulting, but very different in the metaphor of the car. Right? Again, so investor advisor owns the car, the operator drives the car, and these are the passengers in the car, the operators, and the consultants are the mechanics that do their specific task. This is block 3 of understanding the archetypes of the different roles and the 3 primary spaces that we see opportunities in business that we recommend you check out. Put this at the top. As we work through this discovery funnel, the top is always changing. You understand yourself, the new top now is one of these 3 spaces. And then inside of each of those, as you move down and begin to explore and discover what you're interested in.
And really, once you've nailed down, not completely, but once you've found roles that you're interested in, we've talked about a ton of different businesses. And in the next block, we're really going to cover how different industries and different businesses can radically change the role that you're interested in. And tune in next time in block 4 for us to really dive into what that looks like.